In the final years of the Cold War, the Soviet Union created a system designed for one terrifying purpose: not to prevent nuclear war, but to survive it. Hidden deep inside secret military networks was a project so dangerous that Western intelligence agencies gave it a chilling nickname, the Dead Hand. According to reports, if Soviet leadership was destroyed in a nuclear strike, this system could automatically launch a massive nuclear response without human permission. No president, no general, no final confirmation. Just machines deciding the fate of millions. For years, the Soviet government barely acknowledged the system existed. But as fragments of information slowly emerged after the collapse of the USSR, the story became one of the most disturbing Cold War projects ever revealed. This is the story of the Soviet Doomsday machine built to launch nuclear missiles after the end of the world. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union and the United States lived under the constant threat of nuclear conflict. Both superpowers possessed enough weapons to destroy entire nations within hours. Military planners understood something terrifying. If one side launched a surprise nuclear attack first, the other side might not have enough time to respond. This fear shaped almost every aspect of Cold War strategy. Governments built underground bunkers. Radar systems monitored the skies 24 hours a day. Submarines carrying nuclear weapons patrolled the oceans silently. And military commanders searched for ways to guarantee retaliation no matter what happened. Because nuclear deterrence depended on one idea above all else, both sides needed to believe the other could still strike back after being attacked. Without that balance, the risk of nuclear war increased dramatically. Inside the Soviet Union, this fear became especially intense during periods of rising tension with the United States. Soviet leadership worried about the possibility of a sudden American first strike. Advanced missiles could potentially destroy command centers before military leaders had time to react. Communication systems could fail. Government officials could be killed. And nuclear forces might become unable to respond. For Soviet military planners, this scenario was unacceptable. They needed a system capable of surviving even the destruction of central leadership. That idea eventually led to one of the most secretive military projects of the Cold War. A system reportedly designed to guarantee automatic nuclear retaliation even if the Soviet government no longer existed. Western intelligence agencies later referred to the project as Dead Hand. Inside the Soviet Union, it was reportedly known as Perimeter. The exact details remain heavily debated even today. But according to former officials and military sources, the system worked through a terrifying concept. If Soviet command structures were destroyed during a nuclear attack, the system could automatically authorize the launch of nuclear missiles. Not immediately. And not without conditions. Reports suggest the system monitored multiple indicators before activation. Seismic activity, radiation levels, communication failures, military signals. The goal was to determine whether the Soviet Union was under large-scale nuclear attack. If enough warning signs appeared simultaneously, and communication with leadership was lost, the system could allegedly transfer launch authority automatically. This idea terrified many people once it became publicly known years later. Because it sounded less like military strategy, and more like the plot of a science fiction nightmare. A partially automated system connected to nuclear weapons raised enormous ethical and technical questions. Could machines truly determine whether civilization should end? What if sensors malfunctioned? What if false warnings triggered the system accidentally? Cold War history already contained multiple incidents where misunderstandings nearly caused catastrophe. Radar errors, technical failures, human mistakes. Several times, military officers on both sides received warnings that appeared to indicate incoming attacks. Fortunately, human judgment prevented escalation. But the existence of a system like Dead Hand suggested something different. A mechanism designed specifically to remove hesitation. To guarantee retaliation no matter the circumstances. For Soviet military planners, however, the logic seemed necessary. The United States possessed advanced nuclear capabilities. Missile technology improved rapidly during the Cold War. Submarines carrying nuclear weapons could move close to Soviet territory undetected. Long-range bombers remained on alert. And military tensions repeatedly escalated during international crises. Soviet leadership feared the possibility that American decision-makers might someday believe they could destroy Soviet command systems before retaliation became possible. Dead Hand was reportedly intended to eliminate that possibility entirely. If true, the message was simple. Even if the Soviet Union lost its leadership, nuclear retaliation would still occur. In theory, this strengthened deterrence, because it reduced any incentive for a first strike. But the psychological consequences were disturbing. The existence of such a system reflected how deeply nuclear fear had shaped Cold War thinking. Governments no longer focused only on winning wars. They focused on surviving apocalypse scenarios. By the late Cold War period, both superpowers had constructed enormous military infrastructures designed around nuclear conflict. Missile silos stretched across remote landscapes. Submarines remained hidden beneath the oceans. Strategic bombers stood ready for immediate deployment. And underground command centers prepared for scenarios many hoped would never happen. Inside this environment of fear and secrecy, projects like Dead Hand became possible. The Soviet Union invested heavily in command and control systems capable of operating during extreme conditions. Military engineers developed hardened communication networks, backup launch systems, protected bunkers, and redundant chains of command. Everything was designed around one terrifying assumption: a nuclear war might actually happen. Reports suggest Dead Hand relied on special communication rockets capable of transmitting launch orders across massive distances even after normal infrastructure had been destroyed. This detail only increased public fascination years later. The idea of missiles launched not to attack cities directly, but to send final launch instructions across a collapsing nation, felt almost surreal. Many details surrounding the system remain classified or disputed. Some researchers believe the system was partially operational. Others argue parts of the story were exaggerated by Western media. Some former Soviet officials acknowledged the existence of automated retaliation systems. Others downplayed their capabilities. This uncertainty became part of the mystery itself. Because Cold War secrecy affected both sides. Governments intentionally concealed military projects. Disinformation spread constantly. And intelligence agencies often worked with incomplete information. Even today, historians debate exactly how Dead Hand functioned. But enough evidence exists to confirm that the Soviet Union seriously explored automated nuclear retaliation concepts. And that alone is disturbing. The system also reflected a larger truth about the Cold War. Technology advanced faster than political trust. Nuclear arsenals expanded. Missile response times shortened. And governments increasingly relied on machines to process information faster than humans could react. This created an environment where misunderstandings became extraordinarily dangerous. One false signal, one technical malfunction, one incorrect interpretation, and millions of lives could depend on decisions made within minutes. Several Cold War incidents demonstrated how close disaster sometimes came. In one famous case, Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov received computer warnings indicating possible incoming American nuclear missiles. The system suggested an attack had begun. Protocol required reporting the alert immediately. But Petrov suspected the warning was a mistake. He chose not to escalate the situation. Later analysis suggested the warning had indeed been caused by technical error. Many historians believe his decision may have helped prevent catastrophe. Stories like this raised obvious concerns about systems involving automation and nuclear weapons. Human judgment sometimes prevented disaster precisely because humans could question machine errors. Dead Hand appeared to move in the opposite direction, toward guaranteed retaliation regardless of chaos, toward systems operating even after leadership structures collapsed, toward the terrifying possibility of nuclear war continuing automatically. As the Soviet Union approached collapse in the late 1980s and early 1990s, information about previously secret military programs slowly began reaching the outside world. Journalists investigated classified projects. Former officials gave interviews. Western analysts revisited old intelligence reports. And the story of Dead Hand entered public discussion. For many people, it sounded unbelievable. A doomsday machine capable of automatic retaliation seemed too extreme to be real. Yet Cold War history repeatedly demonstrated that both superpowers considered extraordinary scenarios. Fear drove innovation. And nuclear strategy often relied on ideas that appeared irrational outside military logic. Even after the Cold War ended, questions about nuclear command systems remained important. Modern nations still maintain complex early warning systems. Missile defense networks continue operating. And nuclear deterrence remains part of global military strategy. The existence of projects like Dead Hand serves as a reminder of how dangerous Cold War tensions truly became. Entire systems were built around the possibility of civilization-ending conflict. Governments prepared for apocalypse scenarios not as fiction, but as military planning. Today, many details about Dead Hand remain uncertain. Some records are still classified. Some claims remain disputed. And some information may never be fully verified. But the broader reality is difficult to deny. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union explored ways to guarantee nuclear retaliation even after catastrophic attack. And somewhere inside hidden bunkers and military networks, systems existed that were designed to operate when human leadership might already be gone. That reality reveals something terrifying about the Cold War era. The superpowers became so afraid of each other that they built machines designed to function after the end of the world itself. Because during the Cold War, the greatest fear was not losing a war. It was losing the ability to strike back.